right, today is the day. The Senate Judiciary Committee is in the midst of its hearings for the confirmation of William Barr. That would be President Trump's pick for Attorney General to replace Jeff Sessions, of course. And they started about 10 o'clock this morning, and they are going strong here at 12:30. They took a short, what did they call it? What was the official name for
a comfort break?
A comfort break. That cracks me up. I'm gonna start taking those in the middle of the show. I'll let you take over, and I'll take a comfort break, and then I'll have a nappuccino during my comfort break. If you missed hour one, you don't know what I'm talking about right now, but you can always go back and listen to the podcast version of our show online at danabarrett.com. Anyway, I'm joking around, obviously, but they are busily questioning William Barr over there at in the Senate, and Lindsey Graham is in his new role as chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. And they're all over the place. I mean, they're asking him all kinds of questions, and a lot of the focus, I think, as expected, has been on the Mueller investigation, the Russia investigation, whether or not Barr will allow that to come to its natural conclusion and allow the American public to see the results or not. And so we'll start with a little bit of what's been going on there. Senator Dianne Feinstein, who is the minority sort of leader of that committee, started her questions by getting right to it.
There are at least two aspects of Mr. Mueller's investigation. First, Russian interference in the United States election and whether any U.S. persons were involved in that interference. And second, possible obstruction of justice. It's the second component that you have written on. In the memo, you conclude, I think, that Special Counsel Mueller is, quote, grossly irresponsible for pursuing an obstruction case against the president. And pursuing the obstruction inquiry is fatally misconceived. So I hope we can straighten that out in this hearing.
Yeah, so just to be clear on that, she points out that there are, at least two aspects of Mueller's investigation. And the one that I think Barr's 19-page memo was most critical of was the obstruction charge, the potential obstruction investigation, potential obstruction charges that, by firing James Comey, that was an attempt to obstruct justice in the Mueller investigation or in the Russia investigation. And so that's a different question than whether or not there was collusion between the campaign and the Russians to, alter the effects or the outcome of the election. So, there are separate questions there. And that obstruction question seems to be where the controversy lies primarily with Barr's opinion. He also spoke a lot in the 19-page memo about, whether or not presidents can be subpoenaed, indicted, presidential power on the whole, which he seems to be a fan of. So that seems to be where the, at least with Senator Feinstein's questions, were focused. Lindsey Graham using the opportunity to get confirmation that, Barr will act the way the Republicans who are about to confirm him would like, in particular, as it relates to Mueller. Take a listen.
You say you've known Mueller a long time. Would you say you have a close relationship with Mr. Mueller?
I would say we were good friends.
Would you say that you understand him to be a fair-minded person?
Absolutely.
Do you trust him to be fair to the president and the country as a whole?
Yes.
When his report comes to you, will you share it with us as much as possible?
Consistent with the regulations and the law, yes.
Do you believe Mr. Mueller would be involved in a witch hunt against anybody?
I don't believe Mr. Mueller would be involved in a witch hunt.
I see this as a very interesting back and forth between Lindsey Graham and Bill Barr in that, Lindsey Graham, for the most part, has been a strong supporter of the president. Although he has been very depressed of late. He seems more upbeat today, but he's been very depressed of late about this whole shutdown issue, and he has gone against the president on a couple of issues, so I have to be fair to him on that front, that he's not just, there to please the president. He does seem to say what he needs to say on Syria, for example, on the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. He spoke out against the president. And, he certainly on the shutdown issue has tried on several occasions to get the president to do something different than what he's doing. But here, when he asks these questions about the friendship between Bill Barr and Robert Mueller, he seems to be trying to emphasize that Mueller is a good guy and that he's doing the right thing in his investigation, and in particular that the investigation is not a witch hunt. Now, all of that all of that contradicts what the president has said. I mean, the president has criticized Mueller personally, and he has called the investigation a witch hunt over and over and over and over again. So I think it was an interesting way of confirming to the American public and ostensibly to Lindsey Graham's constituency that he wants the Mueller investigation to continue, that the Senate, the GOP members of the Senate, who are the majority, want the Mueller investigation to continue. So I thought that was interesting. Lindsey Graham also made a point of suggesting through his questioning that the FBI has a political taint and that needs to be fixed. Listen to this a little bit.
Do you know a Lisa Page or Peter Strzok?
I've heard their names.
But do you know them personally?
No, I don't.
Do you promise me as Attorney General, if you get this job, to look in to see what happened in 2016?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
How do these statements sit with you?
I was shocked when I saw them.
Okay, please get to the bottom of it. I promise you we will protect the investigation, but we're relying upon you to clean this place up.
This is beating a dead horse if ever there was a dead horse to beat. Lisa Page and Peter Strzok are out. They're not even there anymore. It's been taken care of. We not only have we gotten to the bottom of it, we've gotten like below the bottom of it, because I think it's clear that Strzok and Page were not fans of the president. But this gets to a whole other question, and that is, can you do your job? Can you put your bias aside and do your job? And, they were both removed from their positions because ostensibly it did not appear that that was what they were doing. It doesn't mean the whole investigation is bad. I mean, I think we've debated this over and over and over again. On a personal level, they made a huge mistake, because I guarantee you those kinds of conversations have happened since there was a presidency and since there was an FBI, but they just happened outside of technology. They happened at the bar over a drink. And so nobody had a recording of it like they did in doing this over text message. This is a problem with our modern society. There is no hiding anymore. There's very few places you can have an actual private conversation that someone's not potentially listening to. Or in this case, you were dumb enough to do it on text message. But again, these are human beings in all of these jobs. These senators have bias. The FBI agents have bias. The CIA agents have bias. Every police officer has bias. Every talk radio host has bias. Every doctor has bias. Everybody has bias. And the question is, can you put that bias aside and do your job? I don't know that there's much that that Bill Barr would need to do when he gets in that job, which he is going to be confirmed, unless there's some crazy something that happens between now and the end of this. But everyone expects him to be confirmed. What is he doing? Is he going to go into the FBI and ask everybody what their political bias is? Or do they do the same thing they do with, the new sexual harassment trainings? Do they put bias training in place? Like, hey, listen, we know you're going to have your personal biases. You are certainly allowed to express them, but for starters, don't express them on text messages to each other, you ding-dongs. And, they could call it like the Strzok and Page rule. If you're going to have an extramarital affair, maybe don't do it with one of your colleagues inside the department, because that's also going to make you look bad. It's probably not a good idea. I would say I'd be an advocate for skipping the extramarital affair altogether. But, if you're going to do it, don't do it with a colleague, and don't text them about your political beliefs or your sexual beliefs. Let's be honest. None of that. I mean, look, those two made some enormous mistakes. But again, I'm not really sure why Lindsey Graham felt like it was critical to bring that up. And then to state this, remember, this is supposed to be confirmation hearings in which they're asking Bill Barr questions about his past and his record and his writings and his thinkings and his ideas so that they can decide if he's the right guy for the job. And instead, Lindsey Graham, in that little quote that we played for you, is saying, go clean this up. We're counting on you. So that wasn't even about them asking him questions. It was about Lindsey Graham saying, clean this mess up. So I don't know if that was just a gift back to the president after the it's not a witch hunt part to say, hey, you're right, Strzok and Page are stinky and we need to not have the FBI be that way. I don't know. It was very odd. In any case, the questioning is going on, and that all happened in the early parts of the questioning this morning. They're in session right now. They're talking about everything from the border wall to whether or not journalists can be held in contempt. Everything is up for grabs here. They're talking about drugs, the border, you name it. They even talked about whether or not Barr had any role in the Rosenstein departure. He said no. In fact, he said he asked Rod Rosenstein to stay on board. And it looks like Rod Rosenstein said, maybe. So I guess we'll see what happens. I actually think that would be the best outcome. I really do. I think confirm Barr and then let him, and then have Rosenstein stay in place until the Mueller investigation's done. I feel like most Americans would find that a good result from this, because there's continuity. The guy that's been in charge the whole time isn't gone, and someone else new having to get up to speed. And as long as he's being, there's some oversight by Barr, all should be well. I mean, it seems to me that would be a great outcome. But